Some people dream about making a lot of money, or buying a nice house, or starting a family. My dreams tend to be slightly different. I've always been fascinated by the idea of traveling long distances without flying. I mean, I love airplanes and they are super convenient to get from place A to B, but sometimes the road to get to a place is much more interesting than the actual destination. So I came up with this idea to travel to my hometown in Belgium from a different continent without taking a plane. I am in Asia and this is where my journey home will start, but I gotta say that the Asian part will be rather short, because I happen to be in one of only 5 cities in the world that is located on 2 continents. This is the Asian side of Istanbul, and over there, across the river, that's where Europe begins. Do you think that's a good idea?
I think it's a great idea, but I mean, it's also your idea, so I don't want to be too involved in it, so I think you should just do it by yourself.
Want to go to Europe?
Let's go to Europe!
Europe and Asia. Europe and Asia. We are in Europe, but we are still in Istanbul. I wonder if I'm the only one who thinks that it's very exciting that you can visit 2 continents within 1 city. I do appreciate it that you joined me for the switch between continents.
No, you're welcome. Look, here is the plan. Nick and I will travel together to Bulgaria. Then my sister is joining us in Bulgaria. I'm staying there a little bit longer with her, and then I'm flying to Belgium, and Nick is taking the long route.
The main reason why I was so determined to travel overland was because it would give me the opportunity to stop at interesting places along the way. This trip would take me straight through the Balkans and parts of Eastern Europe. But first, of course, there's Istanbul. Istanbul is one of my favorite cities in the world, and not just because it's in 2 continents, but also because it has such a rich history and culture, and because there's such a variety of different people here. And then I'm not even talking about the food yet. This may look like an everyday bridge, but it's full with fishermen. And if you go 1 level down, there are a bunch of restaurants right under the bridge. But these are some of the most expensive restaurants in the city, so we are not going to eat here.
I don't know, it's because we've spent so much time in Asia, but the food looks so good. I just want to eat it all. You gonna get drunk?
This is also something they don't have in Asia, and maybe it's for the better because I really like raki. Cheers.
So for the people who don't know raki or what a raki is, how does it taste?
It tastes like anise. It's a anisey taste liquor. It's like ouzo. If you've been to Greece, it's like ouzo. It's the same as ouzo. If you've been to France, it's slightly similar to Ricard, to pastis. Yeah, it's really good.
This looks so delicious. Look at it.
This is Turkey's best breakfast. Menemen. It could be that this video will also turn into a culinary experience because I very much like the Turkish food, but after here we are heading into the Balkans and the food over there is also really delicious. Because we already visited Istanbul a couple of times, we can now just skip all the tourist highlights like the Sofia and the Blue Mosque and spend the little time we have here in the narrow streets in these cozy neighborhoods with lots of small shops and bars. It's hard to express the charm that Istanbul has. It's just one big melting pot of different cultures. Everybody is so very friendly, and not just to us, also to the cats. There are so many cats in the city, and the locals treat all of them as if they were their own pets. They give them food, they give them shelter, so much so that some of the cats even got quite an attitude.
Yeah, you distract her and I'll take my shoe. You're giving her more shoe. Allez.
We could have played with the cats much longer, but it was time for us to move on to Bulgaria, in the good old-fashioned backpacker way. I can't remember the last time when we took a night bus, and I'm starting to worry a little bit that maybe there's a reason why we don't take night buses anymore. But it's the only way, or at least the best way, to get from Istanbul to Sofia.
I know why. Because we're getting old.
It's 1 in the morning and the bus stopped, so I think that we are at the border of the European Union. We're in Bulgaria. It's the first time we visit this country, and normally I would be more excited about this, but it's kind of hard to be excited at 2 in the morning. I can't say that this was the best night's sleep, but the good news is that we have early check-in in our Airbnb, so we can still have a nap before we explore the city. It's easy to trick your brain into believing that by traveling at night you win a lot of time during the day, but most of the time that's not really true, especially not if you're a bad sleeper like us on buses and on airplanes. Most of the time if we travel in the night we just arrive that tired in the morning and have to spend some time napping. But now we are awake again and we are in Sofia, the capital of Bulgaria, and it looks really nice. This morning when we arrived it looked kind of dull because it was cloudy and all these big buildings, there's a lot of communist style still left here. They all looked very grayish, a little bit sad, but now that the sun is out it's actually colorful. And you gotta say, these big buildings, they are very impressive. You can see that it's a beautiful Saturday in spring in Bulgaria.
She knows how it feels. It's the best feeling in the world.
This is also the place where our roads will separate.
I just put something in my mouth, but you are right.
One small opinion. But it's not for now, not yet. This is probably the most famous site in all of Sofia. It's the Alexander Nevsky Cathedral. And you can see how famous it is by all the tour buses that are here. And I gotta say, we already passed by here this morning and then it also looked a little bit dull because of the grey weather. But now that the sun is out, you can really see why people like this cathedral so much. And what probably impresses me the most is that this is quite a young cathedral. It's only about 100 years old. It was built in the early 20th century. And yeah, I find this strange because most of the cathedrals and the churches in Europe are always very old, but this one is a new one. I would show you the inside of the cathedral, but it's not really allowed to film, and it's also very dark inside, so probably it won't come to its right anyway. Even though the cathedral is still fairly young, Sofia is actually one of the oldest cities in Europe, and it's also one of the greenest cities. There's quite a contradiction between the huge official government communist buildings and then the communist buildings where the people live. It's mostly ugly concrete things. And there's also a lot of graffiti here. Some of it is real street art, but most are just ugly tags, and it's really on every building. Some of the streets we are walking here, if this would be in another part of the world, we would not dare to walk because it would definitely be a dangerous place. It looks very dodgy sometimes. But apparently it's not dodgy because Sofia is also known as one of the safest cities in Europe. It's hard to not see the communist Soviet history of the city, but if you look a little bit closer, you can also see lots of other cultures. There's a lot of Turkish influence, which is not a surprise because 150 years ago this was still part of the Ottoman Empire. And also Greek influence, Roman influence. And today there's also a new hip upcoming influence with little shops and fancy bars.
How do you say cheers in Bulgarian?
I have no idea.
You should look it up. I am Nazdravie. So, Nazdravie. Oh yeah, cheers. Let's do it proper.
Nazdravie.
Nazdravie. Fun fact, a local belief is that you can't raise your glass for a toast if it's not full of alcohol. That's the way we like it. So, Nazdravie.
This is the point where everything will take an interesting turn because for a short while there will be 3 of us traveling and then it will be just me. What does it say?
To my dearest sister from Belgium.
It's in Flemish. If we just made it seem as if all we did was drink, that is just partially true, but one bar did run out of wine because of us. And before we knew it, the time came to say goodbye. My time back in the European Union had been short because one border control later I was in Serbia. I could have avoided all this hassle by just taking a plane, but that was not what I wanted. What I wanted was the road that would now take me to Belgrade. You got to have a look at this. This is the view from my Airbnb, and you wouldn't say that I'm right in the center of a city where 2 million people live. And check out the state of that house over there. I'm a little bit concerned that the state of the building of my Airbnb is a little bit similar. Look at these walls. Now that I'm traveling solo, of course, my accommodation budget is a lot lower than what it normally is. But it's okay, I have this small studio, it has everything it needs. I even have a small kitchen and yeah, a couch bed. And I have a toilet and a shower, so yeah, it's fine. And I'm not here to stay inside anyway. Check out these stairs. I don't think that it will take long before somebody falls through. I just hope it won't be me. But this Airbnb is actually not a bad representation of Belgrade, because also the city is quite rough around the edges. But once you get to know it a little bit better, it's also a very, very vibrant city. This is why I didn't really bother to look for a more comfortable Airbnb, because just a 5-minute walk and I'm in the historical center of Belgrade. But let's keep the center for a bit later and head to the rivers first. This over there, not the boat, but the rivers, is probably the big landmark of Belgrade. It's where the Sava and the Danube River come together. And it's not a coincidence that they built the city over here. It happens around the world. Everywhere where there's a waterway or an ocean or a sea, people started building cities because it was much easier for transportation. Just like it's not a coincidence either that there is a big fortress just right on the crossing of the rivers. Because yeah, big cities needed to be protected and rivers were also very easy to attack places. Belgrade already exists since times of the dinosaurs. Yeah, no, this was obviously a very bad joke, but it is one of Europe's oldest cities, and in more recent history, it's mostly known as the capital of former Yugoslavia. To give you a very brief history, Yugoslavia used to be one of the largest countries in Europe, and in communist times it was also a communist superpower. But then communism started falling apart, and so did the country, and different regions started to separate themselves into their own country. And these separations were not always very friendly. Those times are mostly known as the Balkan Wars. One of the bloodiest periods of them all was the war between Serbia and Kosovo. It got so bad that eventually NATO got in between and started bombing Belgrade.
Western nations carried out their threat against Serbia and began the biggest military conflict on Serbian soil since World War II.
And this is very recent history. The bombing of Belgrade is 1999. You have to imagine this. The people you see in this video, you see walking on the street, most of them were already born and have memories of those bombings. So maybe you're wondering why I'm telling you all this. Well, first of all, those are the things that I normally pester Linz with, but since I'm traveling solo now, I will have to pester you with it. But also it's interesting to understand the situation here. It's not because NATO decides to get in between that all problems are magically solved. As far as I remember, Serbia still doesn't recognize Kosovo as a separate country. And also within Serbia, there are still quite a lot of struggles. Just to give you a brief history, because this is not a political blog, and if we start talking politics, I will be sitting here for hours and I will bore half of you and probably piss the other half of you off. By the way, the fact that you are my only soundboard here in Belgrade is definitely not a complaint. I like talking to you, and I like traveling solo. It's a lot of fun. It's just a pity that there's nobody to share it with. Like this fortress, for example, it's magnificent. It's also free. This is a good thing about Belgrade. So many things are free or very cheap. So let's go explore some other parts of Belgrade. This is the Republic Square, the main square of Belgrade. And here you can easily see all the different faces of the city. I don't know much about architectural styles, but it's not hard to see the difference between these buildings that look as if they are stolen from Paris or Rome, and then the communist concrete buildings, and then there's even a quite modern glass building over there on the other corner. Somebody recently called Belgrade a mess, but that is also its charm, and that is very true. It's just all these different styles together, and if everything goes well, if we just go around another corner, we will see a completely different style. I remember the only other time that I've ever been in Belgrade must be about 10 years ago. I was also traveling solo. I had no idea where I was going, and I suddenly ended up in this street. And it's so completely different than the rest of the city. And that's a memory. That's one of the only memories I still have about that trip. And this is a real pity. This was my favorite part of the street. These are old factory walls, and they were painted in the way that the city or this part of the city used to look back in the day. But the time and the weather probably have had their influence on the paintings, because they look very vague now. Back in the day when I was here for the first time, it was very alive, as if it was freshly painted. It's a shame that they don't maintain this. But still, very picturesque, very romantic. If you're coming to Belgrade, I think this street is called Skadarska Street. You can look it up in any guide probably. And it's also a good place to have lunch. I went for a typical Serbian dish called sarma with mashed potatoes. Here's the downside about vlogging solo. It's quite impossible to cut my meat and my food and film it at the same time. It's basically cabbage stuffed with minced meat and it's really delicious. And then we take another turn and we are in a cozy green park. There's so much more to do in Belgrade, way too much for one day or even for one full video. But I hope that I've been able to give you a glimpse of what's happening here. One more thing that is important to mention, I believe, is that Belgrade has a very, very big nightlife scene. Back in 2010, Times magazine even called this place the #1 nightlife place in the world. It's full of bars, full of clubs. There's for every genre, there's something. There's a very big techno scene. Maybe you remember when we passed by the river that there were all these buildings on the river. Those are all nightclubs. But it's not gonna be for me because going to a club on your own, it's kinda sad. So instead I'm going to a rock concert, a Serbian rock concert tonight. But I'm not gonna take any cameras. So if you wanna know what Serbian rock sounds like, just send me a DM and I can probably send you the link of the band that's gonna be playing. And then my trip home to Belgium will continue, where eventually, hopefully, Linz will make her big return in this channel. So if you don't wanna miss that, yeah, I'm still not used to the fact that she's not here. If you don't want to miss that, subscribe to this channel, click the like button and the notification button. And that's about it for buttons, I guess. And I will see you next week. Bye bye.